Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Kunja Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Abba Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yasodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Yasodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Yamunatiravana Chari. Yamunatiravana Chari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Girivardhari. Yasodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Yasodanandana Brajajanaranjana. Yamunatiravana Chari. Yamunatiravana Chari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvidagacharya Astatarasata Sri Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Gora Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This evening we're going to be reading from Chaitanya Bhagavata. Chaitanya Bhagavata, yes? You're familiar? A little bit? Kind of. A little bit. You're familiar with Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? And Chaitanya Bhagavata is a similar biography written earlier than Chaitanya Charitamrita, almost a whole generation earlier or more, by Vrindavan Das Thakur. And it has 3 parts, and we're reading from the first part, Adi Kanda, similar to Ramayana Kanda, Adi Kanda. And it's the part that we're reading from is chapter 8. It's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's childhood pastimes. And as we've been saying, that the childhood pastimes of the personality of Godhead, something that Vrindavan says in the previous chapter, please pay attention because these activities are the activities of Lord Narayan in his childhood. Because in Vaikuntha, Lord Narayan doesn't have childhood pastimes. There's no birth, there's no childhood. But when Krishna descends, and when just after the Kali Yuga, after the Dwapara Yuga, when Krishna descends once in a day in Brahma, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also descends and performs childhood pastimes that are unique. They're unique. Consider avatars of the Lord. And are there childhood pastimes? Well, Lord Ramachandra appears as the son of Dasarath, but there's 5-6 verses only describing, even in Balakanda, describing his childhood pastimes. But it's very special and very attractive, charming, and attracting the heart to Krishna, because that's why he comes. He comes to teach us. Lord Chaitanya appears in this world to teach how to surrender to Krishna, how to draw your attention to Krishna. So he's doing that with his devotees because he's Krishna himself. So this chapter is the disappearance of Jagannath Mishra. The previous chapter was Vishwarup, the older brother of Nimai Pandit. Vishwarup was his older brother. He took sannyas. And Jagannath Mishra and Sachi and everybody's beside themselves with disturbance. They tried to pacify him in various ways, Jagannath Mishra. And to no avail. He's very attached to transcendental attachment to Vishwarup. All glories to Shri Gaura Sundara, the ocean of mercy. All glories to the moon-like Lord of the house of Sachi and Jagannath. All glories to the life and soul of Nityananda Sarup. All glories to the inaugurator of the congregational chanting of the holy names. All glories to Shri Gauranga, along with his devotees and associates. By hearing the topics of Lord Chaitanya, one attains the devotional service of the Lord. In this way, the Supreme Lord confidentially resided in the house of Jagannath Mishra. No one was able to recognize him. The Lord enjoyed every variety of childhood sports found in the world. Who can describe them all? These pastimes will later be described through the Vedas in all the Puranas, and fortunate souls will hear about them. As Sri Gaurasunda remained fully absorbed in childhood pastimes, the time came for his accepting a Brahmana thread. For the sacred thread ceremony of his son, Jagannath Mishra invited all of his friends and relatives to his house. Must have had a big house. Everyone happily gathered there and assisted in various ways according to their ability. The women chanted Krishna's glories, and the musicians played mridanga, shanai, and flute. The Brahmanas recited the Vedas, and the professional blessers chanted prayers. Thus, Sachi Devi's house appeared as the incarnation of ecstasy. As Sri Gaurasundara accepted the Brahman thread, all the auspicious planetary conjunctions fell on the house of Sachi. The month, day, and moment were all auspicious as Sri Gaurahari accepted the Brahmana thread. The enchanting thread beautified the body of the Lord as if Anantashesha surrounded his body in a subtle form. There's a devotee astrologer who just sent me, I don't know how to read it, but there's two different systems of conducting astrological charts. Without the names, there are two different systems. And he sent me the birth chart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And if you're interested, let me know and I'll send it to you because I can't read it. But, all auspiciousness was at 3:30 in the afternoon. No, this was Bhakti Siddhanta. Bhakti-Siddhanta's birth chart. Bhakti-Siddhanta's birth chart. All auspiciousness. Specific time, this and that. I can't follow all the systems. It's lots of details in astrology. So they were very capable astrologers at the time, and they calculated the auspicious moment for his Upanayana. The enchanting thread beautified the body of the Lord as if Anantashesh surrounded his body in a subtle form. Everyone was most pleased to see how Lord Gaurachandra resembled Vamana. On seeing his wonderful Brahmana effulgence, no one considered him an ordinary child. Then, with a stick in his hand and a bag on his shoulder, Sri Gaurasundara went to beg alms at the houses of his devotees. Everyone gave in satisfaction according to their ability. All the women smiled as they put their alms in the Lord's bag. The chaste wives of Brahmashiva and various great sages all took the form of Brahmana's wives. They felt great satisfaction seeing Vishwambar's Vamana form and smiled as they placed alms in the Lord's bag. The Lord also enjoyed his Vamana pastimes, which were enacted for the deliverance of the conditioned souls. All glories to Sri Gaurachandra, who accepted the form of Lord Vamana. Please donate your lotus feet in charity to my heart. That's a nice prayer. Whoever hears the topics of the Lord accepting a Brahmana thread certainly attains the shelter of Sri Chaitanya's lotus feet. In this way, the Lord of Vaikuntha enjoyed in the house of Shachi various pastimes that are unknown in the Vedas. After properly understanding the meanings of the scriptures at home, the Lord desired to study in the company of his associates. Quiz question. What was the name of his teacher? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as Nimai Pandit, enrolled in the school of blank. Now that I paused, you'll probably remember it. Gangadas Pandit. Gangadas Pandit. In Navadvip, there resided the topmost teacher, Gangadas Pandit, who was none different from Sandipani Muni. He was in full knowledge of the grammatical literatures, so the Lord desired to study under him. Understanding the desire of his son, Jagannath Mishra, took him to the house of the Brahmana Gangadas. When they arrived, Gangadas stood up out of respect and embraced Sri Mishra Then they sat together on an asana. Jagannath Mishra said, I'm offering you my son. Please teach him everything. Gangadas replied, It is my great fortune. I will teach him to the best of my ability. Gangadas was most happy to see his new student, and he treated him like his own son. After hearing only once, the Lord would assimilate whatever Gangadas explained. He would refute the explanations of his guru, and then again establish the explanation that he just refuted. There were thousands of students, but no one had the ability to defeat his explanations. Gangadas was pleased to see Nimai's wonderful intelligence, and he accepted him as his best student. The Lord would regularly challenge and defeat all of Gangadas Pandit's other students. Sri Murari Gupta, Sri Kamalakanta, and Sri Krishnananda were some of the Lord's prominent classmates. We know who Murari Gupta was, right? Murari Gupta, the physician. Murari Gupta. The house of Murari Gupta is very close to the house of Jagannath Mishra. He was very devoted to Lord Ramachandra, but a great devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They were apparently the same age. And Kamalakanta. Kamalakanta is mentioned as the personal servant, the personal secretary of Advaitacharya, because Advaitacharya's one of his residences was near Srivas Thakur. So Kamalakanta eventually became his personal secretary. The Lord challenged and defeated all of them, even the elder boys. But they would consider the Lord just like a child and simply smile at him. After school, the Lord regularly went with his friends to bathe in the Ganges. In Navadvip, there were innumerable students, and they all took bath in the Ganges at midday. You should cherish the desire for the same opportunity. The Ganges constantly prayed, when will I be fortunate like the Yamuna? Although the Ganges is worshipped by Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, she nevertheless still desires the good fortune of the Yamuna. Lord Gaurasundara is like a wish-fulfilling tree that constantly satisfied the desires of the Ganges. After enjoying various places in the waters of the Ganges, Sri Gaurachandra joyfully returned home. The Lord then worshipped Vishnu according to regulation, and after watering Tulsi, he took his meal. Immediately after taking his meal, the Lord took his books and sat in a solitary place. The Lord, who is the crest jewel among the demigods, fully absorbed himself in his studies and composed his own commentary on the sutras. Seeing his son studying attentively, Jagannath Mishra floated in an ocean of happiness and forgot whether it was day or night. Every day, Jagannath Mishra felt indescribable happiness in seeing the face of his son. Sri Mishra drank the nectarian beauty of his son's form in such a way that it appeared he had merged his body with the Lord. Jagannath Mishra, however, considered the happiness of merging with the Lord to be most insignificant. I offer unlimited obeisances at the feet of Sri Jagannath Mishra, whose son was the Lord of innumerable universes. In this way, whenever he saw his son, Sri Mishra Chandra would float in an ocean of bliss. The beauty of the Lord surpassed that of Cupid. Each of his limbs was extraordinarily beautiful. Seeing the beauty of his son, Jagannath Mishra thought, I'm afraid that my son may be attacked by ghosts or demons. Out of fear, Sri Mishra surrendered his son at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. As Gaurachandra smiled, watching from a secluded place, Jagannath Mishra prayed, Oh, Krishna, you are the protector of all. Please glance mercifully upon my son. Whoever remembers your lotus feet will never face any disturbances at home. Those sinful places where you are not remembered are the residences of ghosts, witches, and evil spirits, my dear king. Wherever people in any position perform their occupational duties of devotional service by chanting and hearing, there cannot be any danger from bad elements. Therefore, there was no need for anxiety about Gokula, where the Supreme Personality of Godhead was personally present. Oh, my Lord, I am your servant. Everything I possess belongs to you, so please preserve it. Therefore, do not allow any obstacles or danger to disturb my son. In this way, with folded hands and fixed concentration, Jagannath Mishra constantly begged for the Lord's mercy. Then, one day, Jagannath Mishra unexpectedly had a dream that filled his heart simultaneously with happiness and lamentation. After the dream, he offered his obeisances and prayed, "Oh, Lord Govinda, let Nimai stay at home. Oh, Krishna, this is the only benediction that I ask of you. Let Nimai stay at home as a householder." Astonished, Sachi inquired, "Why are you suddenly asking for these benedictions?" Jagannath Mishra replied, "Today I dreamt that Nimai had shaved his head. I am unable to describe how wonderfully he looked. Dressed as a sannyasi, he laughed, danced, and cried, while constantly chanting the name of Krishna. Headed by Advaitacharya, the devotees performed kirtan as they circumambulated Nimai. The next moment I saw Nimai sitting on Vishnu's simhasana and placing his feet on the heads of the devotees. Brahma, Shiva, Ananta Shesh, everyone chanted, "Jai Sachinandana." As I watched devotees in all directions offering prayers with great ecstasy, I became speechless out of fear. Shortly thereafter, I saw Nimai dancing through the streets of Navadvip, surrounded by millions of people. As those innumerable people followed Nimai, the sound of their chanting and the names of Hari pierced the coverings of the universe. The only sound I heard was the prayers that were being offered to Nimai from all sides as they traveled on the path to Nilachala. After seeing this dream, I became filled with anxiety that Nimai will leave home and take sannyas. Sachi then said, "Although you had such a dream, don't worry. Nimai will certainly remain at home. He's not interested in anything other than his studies, as if that has become his life and soul." In this way, the most exalted couple discussed various topics out of affection for their son. After passing some days like this, Jagannath Mishra, whose body is eternally pure, departed from this world. After his departure, the Lord cried profusely, just as Ramachandra cried after the departure of Maharaj Dasarath. Notice the similarity of modes of love in the pastimes. Mother Sachi survived simply due to her irresistible attraction for Sri Gaurachandra. Elaborating on these topics is too painful. Therefore, I have given only a brief description. In this way, Sri Gaurahari and his mother controlled their grief as they lived together in seclusion. Sachi Devi engaged fully in the service of her fatherless son with no interest in any other activity. If she did not see Gaurachandra for a danda, that's some measure, small measure of time, 12 minutes or something like that, she would faint and become blinded. The Lord also constantly displayed affection and pacified his mother with pleasing words. He said, "Oh, mother, don't be aggrieved. As long as I am with you, you have everything. I will readily bring you that which people consider rare even for Brahma and Shiva." What to speak of her distress, Mother Sachi even forgot her own self upon seeing the beautiful face of Sri Gaurachandra. He whose remembrance fulfills the desires of all was personally present in the form of her son. Therefore, How could she remain miserable? Rather, Sachi Devi soon recovered her blissful nature. In this way, the Lord of Vaikuntha relished ecstasy as a Brahmana child in Navadvip. Although the Lord's house displayed all the symptoms of poverty, he would make demands, like the King of Kings. He never considered whether there was anything at home or not. If he didn't get what he demanded, there would be no escape from his wrath. He would even break the door of the house without considering that it was his loss. Still, out of affection, Sachi would try to immediately give him whatever he demanded. One day, as the Lord prepared to go and take his bath in the Ganges, he asked his mother for oil and amalaki. I want to worship the Ganges after taking bath, he said, so please give me a garland and some sandalwood paste. His mother replied, please listen, my dear child. I will bring a garland. Just wait a moment. As soon as he heard the words, I will go bring, the son of Sachi became angry as Lord Rudra. You will go now to get a garland. Saying this, the Lord angrily entered the house. In an angry mood, the Lord first broke all the pots of Ganges water. He then took a stick and broke the containers of oil, ghee, and salt to pieces. The Supreme Independent Lord then broke all the small and big clay pots that were used for auspicious ceremonies. Oil, ghee, milk, rice, cotton, paddy, salt, badi, and mung dal were strewn throughout the entire house. In an angry mood, the Lord tore down and smashed all the hanging pots. He tore apart the cloth and everything else he found in the house. After breaking everything, he directed his anger on the house. Holding a stick in two hands, he began striking the house. No one dared to restrain him. Then, after smashing the doors and house, he began hitting a tree with his stick. Still his anger did not subside. He began striking the earth. Mother Sachi fearfully hid in a corner of the house. The Lord is the personification of religious principles. He advented to establish Sanatan Dharma, so he never tried to hit his mother. Although the Lord was filled with anger, he would not hit his mother. After breaking everything he could, the Lord finally began to roll in the courtyard out of anger. As the golden limbs of the Lord became covered with sand, he appeared indescribably beautiful. After rolling on the ground for some time, Gora calmed down as he continued lying there. In this way, the Lord of Vaikuntha entered into Yoga Nidra as he lay there on the ground. He who lies in the body of Ananta, he whose lotus feet are constantly served by the goddess of fortune, he who is known who is to be known through the Vedas, the same Lord was now sleeping in the courtyard of Sachi. He whose hair pores are the sources of innumerable universes, he whose servants direct the creation, maintenance, and destruction of those universes, he whose glories intoxicate the minds of even Shiva and Brahma, that same Lord was now sleeping in the courtyard of Sachi. As the Supreme Lord thus relished Yoga Nidra, all the demigods either cried or laughed. Shortly thereafter, Sachi brought a garland and other ingredients for worshipping the Ganges. She slowly brushed the sand off the Lord's body and lifted him up. Get up, my dear son, open your eyes, and take this garland. Go worship the Ganges as you desire. It is good that you have broken everything. I hope that all future impediments have been destroyed by this act. What mother's going to respond that way, huh? On hearing his mother's words, Sri Gaurasundar felt embarrassed, and went to take bath. Meanwhile, Mother Sachi cleaned the house and prepared to cook. Although the Lord had destroyed so many things, Sachi did not feel any distress. She simply tolerated Gaura's mischief, just as Mother Yashoda tolerated Krishna's unlimited mischief in Gokula. In this way, Sachi, the mother of the universe, constantly tolerated all of Gauranga's mischievous activities. I am unable to describe the many other similar mischievous pastimes performed by the Lord. Mother Sachi tolerated them all with her body, mind, and speech, as though she was Mother Earth herself. After some time, Nimai, the supreme enjoyer of various pastimes, returned home after taking bath in the Ganges. The Lord then worshipped Vishnu, offered water to Tulsi, and sat down for his meal. Fully satisfied after his meal, the Lord washed his hands and then chewed some betel nut. Thereafter, Mother Sachi softly asked him, "My dear son, why have you destroyed so many things? The house and its door belong to you. Destroying them is your loss. It's not my concern. You say that you will go to school now, but have nothing left at home. What will you eat tomorrow?" The Lord smiled and said, "Krishna is the maintainer of everyone. He will maintain us." Saying this, the Lord, who is the husband of the goddess of learning, took his books and went off to school. After happily enjoying his studies, the Lord went to the Ganges in the evening. He passed some time on the bank of the Ganges and then returned to his home. The Lord then called his mother to a secluded place and gave her 20 grams of gold. "Dear mother, see what Krishna has given. Please get it exchanged for our necessities." Thereafter the Lord went to bed, while the astonished Sachi Devi considered, "From where does he bring this gold so often? I'm afraid that later on some problem might arise. Whenever there is a shortage of necessities at home, he has brought gold. Does he borrow it? Or does he know some mystic power? Otherwise, whose gold is it? And how does he get it?" The supremely honest and magnanimous Sachi became fearful of getting gold exchanged so often. Sachi would have the gold checked by 5 or 10 people before getting it exchanged. In this way, the Supreme Lord of all mystic powers secretly resided in Navadvip. He did not leave aside his books for even a moment, and as he studied with his classmates, he looked just like Cupid. His forehead was decorated with tilak, and the curly hair on his head stole the mind of all. With a Brahmana thread hanging on his shoulder, he appeared to be the personification of Brahminical effulgence. His beautiful smiling face was most pleasing, and his teeth were divine. How wonderful were his 2 lotus eyes, and how wonderful was the way he wore his dhoti. Whoever saw him could not remove their gaze from his form, and no one could refrain from complimenting his extraordinary beauty. While studying, Nimai gave such nice explanations that his teacher was greatly satisfied with him. Indeed, his teacher recognized Nimai as the foremost of all his students. The teacher said, "Dear child, you must study attentively. Then you will soon be known as the Bhattacharya." The Lord replied, "It is not difficult for anyone you bless to become a Bhattacharya." Whenever Sri Gurusundar asked a question none of the students were able to answer, he would himself establish the explanation, and the next moment he would refute it. If someone was able to establish a point, the Lord would give him the proper explanation. While bathing, eating, and traveling, the Lord had no engagement other than studying the scriptures. While the Lord enjoyed his pastimes as a student, he did not disclose himself due to the fallen condition of the world. At that time, the entire world was devoid of devotional service to the Lord, and people were engaged simply in materialistic association and activities. People held various grand festivals for the sons and daughters, and they had no care for anything other than their body and their home. The Vaishnavas were all distressed at heart to see the people's attachment to illusory happiness. They all cried, "Oh, Krishna! Oh, Lord, please be merciful on these fallen souls. These people have not developed attachment for Krishna. After attaining this human form of life, how long will they suffer such degradation? Their human form of life, which is desired even by the demigods, is being wasted in the pursuit of false happiness." We're almost done. They don't celebrate Krishna's appearance, but they spend their entire lives celebrating weddings and other family festivals. Oh, Lord, the living entities are your parts and parcels, and you are their protector and supreme father. In this way, the devotees always desire the welfare of the living entities, and they pray to Lord Krishna on their behalf. Accepting Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu as my life and soul, I, Vrindavan Das, sing the glories of their lotus feet. Very sweet, huh? We've been missing out not hearing these wonderful pastimes on a regular basis. Now, these writings were actually sung, musical instruments and different meters and, with that kind of composition. And people would learn just by that method, singing, repeating the verses, similar to how Ramayana was learned, similar to how Mahabharata was learned. So one can just picture in your mind a Bengali village and somebody, a Brahmana, has learned all these and recites them, and musicians playing music and people enjoying the pastimes of the personality of Godhead. Now, all of this is, once again, to attract our hearts and minds to Krishna. He's the pastimes of student life had a purpose. Just as Krishna, even when he was very young, he had a super attraction for the cows. Naturally so. As a Brahmana, is a natural attraction for studies. Naturally so. But as a Brahmana, he was superlative. And it served, the purpose it served was later when he had developed attraction for bhakti, the impersonalists and atheists could not say, "Oh, you're just a weak-minded person. You can't cut the mustard with studying of Vedanta, so you have to give you a softie and go do the bhakti thing, just because you don't have sufficient intelligence and intellectual acumen as a Brahmin." So that it displaced all that, for sure, because he had that capacity, but he left it behind. When it was necessary, he used it. When he had, for example, when he had his discussions with Prakashananda Saraswati, or with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, or others where he discussed Vedanta philosophy, he claimed that he didn't understand Vedanta philosophy. He claimed that his spiritual master, Ishwar Puri, said, "You're a fool, you're not qualified, just chant Hare Krishna." But he demonstrated that he understood it perfectly. So he had that because he's the Supreme Lord. He had that capacity. But pastime-wise, he's showing a covered form of his own devotee, or someone who becomes his devotee by association with devotees, by associating with Ishwar Puri specifically. And that's one of the chapters. Later on, we're going to hear Ishwar Puri was traveling. Ishwar Puri was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. Ishwar Puri was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. And this month, we're going to be observing the disappearance day of Madhavendra Puri. So we'll hear some more about Madhavendra Puri. Ishwar Puri he had written a book about Krishna. And his activity when traveling to holy places was he would receive invitations from brahmanas, and then he would recite from his book on glorification of Krishna. That was his program, at least when he visited Navadvip. So Lord Chaitanya was requested by Ishwar Puri. I heard you're a super scholar in grammar. Can you listen as I describe these pastimes of Krishna written in my book? And if you find a grammatical mistake, please point it out so I can correct the mistake. That was his access to Ishwar Puri. And Lord Chaitanya said, there can't be any mistake in your writing. So I would be foolish to say there's a mistake. And Ishwar Puri said, no, anyone that writes knows you should have someone proofread or look over your work because there may be some mistake. So he repeated the request for some service, so it was done. Then one fine day, there's a detail, and it will come across it in the course of these readings. But Lord Chaitanya made a suggestion. Instead of this, it should be that. It would be better grammatically if it was this instead of that. Ishwar Puri thought, let me consider your suggestion. Tomorrow we'll discuss. He came back the next day, and Ishwar Puri was firm, saying, no, it should be that, not this, for this reason. It was grammatically intentional. So, an author knows the purpose of what he has written. At the same time, there are grammatical rules for Sanskrit composition, and the rules should match the intention, or the intention must follow rules. So he explained to Lord Chaitanya his intention and the rule that matched his intention, and Lord Chaitanya was defeated. Nobody defeated him. Nobody defeated him. Nobody defeated him. But he accepted defeat from Ishwar Puri because that was a pastime. There's no argument with Ishwar Puri, or no argument in situations like that. So it was service to a great soul. And that's a very important part of progressing in bhakti, service to a great soul. At that point, he wasn't a spiritual master. He was just a mendicant sannyasi traveling here and there and visiting and so forth. But service to a great soul. And then later comes where the end of the Adhikanda takes place, where he receives initiation, mantra, diksha, from Ishwar Puri. So the student pastime portion of his life is important for the latter portion of his life, for the mission, establishing Braja Prem. Now, some of you may know. Okay, if you don't know, now you'll know. There are scholarly people who take objection to the 5 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam in which Krishna is enjoying with the gopis. the Rasalila section. Starts with chapter 29, goes to chapter 33 in Canto 10. And they object strenuously, vigorously, like offensively. They object. But Lord Chaitanya was considering that the pastimes, the type of love exhibited by the residents of Vrindavan is the highest type of love, and amongst them, the highest type of love is the love of the gopis. And it wasn't because he was philosophically a weakling or sentimental or something like that. It was important that the student pastimes were important in establishing the strength of he who was a strictest of sannyasis, considered the love of the gopis the topmost. It wasn't material, in other words. Material affairs is one thing, and the love affairs in Vrindavan is another. It's the most exalted. Hope you get the picture. So, it's a pastime for a purpose. And part of it is the exchange with his friends, with the teachers, with the adults, and so forth and so on. It's pastimes of loving exchange, like Krishna did in Vrindavan. Pastimes of loving exchange. The function of a young cowherd boy is different than the function of a young Brahmin boy, but the principle of loving exchange is the same. Just carried out in a different way. Okay, let's see if there's some discussion. You get to carry the microphone, I think. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. You said all these pastimes are the loving exchange. I'm trying to see like the situation where Mahaprabhu gets angry. Is there any reason why he became so angry about? Is there any reason that he got so angry? And
Yeah.
It's
to
that
I knew
extent.
someone was going to ask this. I should have said it before somebody asked it, but it was just mentioned, and it didn't dwell on it. He was in the mood of Rudra. Sometimes he was in the mood of Vamana. Sometimes he was in the mood of Varaha. Sometimes he was in the mood of Nrsimha. Sometimes, because within him is everything. It's just a spontaneous exhibition of, that which is within him. And the anger of Lord Shiva at the time of cosmic annihilation was coming out. It was a pastime. It was just an exhibit of ecstatic emotion. That's all.
And I have another question, Maharaj. It's are the pastimes the same in Chaitanya Charitamrita and?
There's slight, but only slight variation. Largely, the way that it went, the way that Krishna Das Kaviraj wrote after, nearly a generation after Vrindavan Das Thakur. And when it came to a pastime that Vrindavan Das Thakur describes elaborately like this, he just, one line or a phrase within the sentence, he touches it. Because he's A and B, he's respecting Vrindavan Das, explicitly and implicitly. And he says, second is, he doesn't want to expand the volume. He was very, very old, and several times in his writing, I don't know if I'll live to complete this. So he was, pressed for time. So out of respect and pressed for time, he just touched on, but some things slightly different. In just a detail, it's not a major difference. And where he expands is particularly, the philosophical portion, like Lord Chaitanya in 5 features, elaborating on each of the Panchatattva members and who they are philosophically and how it fits into the big picture of the Vedas, and the debates with Prakashananda Saraswati and Sarvabhauma, but the details and details and details with philosophical references, scriptural references supporting this and that. That's Krishna. That's where he spent most of his time. Those kinds of things, explaining Shikshastaka, instructions to Rupa and Sanatan, discussion with Ramananda Roy. Those aren't in Vrindavan Das Thakur's writings. So he expanded there and just touched on other things. So largely the same, almost completely the same. Anything else? Pastimes, not a lot of questions. I'm getting that picture. Anything online? Yes or no? Yes.
From Raghunandan Prabhu is saying a comment about the verses being set to music. Available today as it is, and all versions are almost similar to one another. He mentioned that the verses was Srimad Bhagavatam was also sung in music format and passed along. Incorrect words couldn't creep in as the verses are set to meters, and those conversant with Srimad Bhagavatam would recollect the meter and the words that go together with it.
Well, to elaborate on that, of the 6 Goswamis, one whose renown was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam was Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. And he would recite Srimad Bhagavatam, singing each verse in 4 or 5 different melodies. And his sweet voice, it is said, it sounded, the cuckoos would sit in the tree and listen. The cuckoos are said to be sweet-sounding birds when they sing. Cuckoo. But apparently it's very sweet sound. And they would sit in the branches of the tree and hear his sweet singing of the verses of the Bhagavatam. So yes, Bhagavatam is also to be sung. So, anything further online, or we're done? Okay. You have something, Yankadari?
I felt like I was appreciating the response of Mother Sachi, even after so much of anger exhibited with the Lord. So tolerant and patient. And
well, she's the mother of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but also appreciated by all the Vaishnavas as the mother of the universe, or like the earth, tolerant of anything. Now, the earth does restrict. Prabhupada speaks about this particularly when Prithu Maharaj became king. He was very angry because the earth was restricting, and then she was confronted by Prithu, who said, "I'm restricting because they're exploiting and they're not performing yajna. So I'll supply. So Mother Sachi was tolerant like the earth. That's a common comparison or characteristic. Just like the characteristic of sugar is sweet, the characteristic of earth is tolerance. And Mother Sachi was very tolerant. When he calmed down, she asked him, "Why did you destroy all this?" Because she's not understanding within him is everything, including the feature of Rudra, and he's exhibiting the feature of destruction, taking it out upon the house and all the paraphernalia in the house, big mess everywhere. She's just tolerant.
I was also thinking the parallel, how Dasharath, King Dasharath left after Lord Sri Ram left the forest, lamenting and crying, and similarly Jagannath Mishra, before also when he stopped Nimai to stop going to school, he was contemplating on the same subject, and in today also it said he was dreaming about what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then he left his body in the same mood. We don't see this kind of lamentation when Krishna left Vrindavan to Madurai. Nanda Maharaj did not lament like that.
It's found not in the Bhagavatam, but in our Vaishnava literature. That which sustained their lives, however, was Krishna's promise that he would return. It's an important Rasika topic, hanging one's hopes on the words of the Supreme Lord. So for us as sadhakas, we have, Krishna's promise. And for those who are in pure love of God, in ecstatic, transcendental prema, the words of Krishna are everything too. So when one has faith in a physician, it helps the healing process. It's stated in the Vedas. Faith is very essential in 5 areas, and one of those is medicine, and another is teachings. You don't have faith in a teacher, even the teacher may be giving perfect teachings, it doesn't have the same effect as one who has faith in the teacher. And then the teachings have more profound effect. Faith is a very key dynamic principle in upliftment and of well-being. So faith has its function in the transcendental realm. It's not like, okay, the bell rang and now I don't have faith. I don't have to. Faith is everything. The words of Krishna is everything. And then there's this ecstatic position of the residents of Vrindavan where they say surprising things to one another. Krishna to Madhumangal, and the gopis to Krishna, and like that. So there's it's a profound. Circling back to your question, because Krishna gave his promise that sustained their lives. Because Krishna is everything for them, and they had full faith in Krishna will maintain his word. And Krishna maintained his word. According to our acharyas, he returned for 2 months. And then there's further explanation in Brihat Bhagavatamrita that's very mysterious. Okay. Anyone else? Yes?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
I'm listening.
How old when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he had sacred ceremony, and how old when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when Jagannath Mishra, his father, disappeared?
It doesn't specify. We can assume that his Upanayana took place at the same time that is tradition for a young boy to take Upanayana. But it doesn't say specifically. I can see if in Bhaktisiddhanta's commentary he specifies, but as far as I know, it's not specified. They're just following his pastimes as if he's a worldly person, and those who are engaging with him are engaging with him likewise. I mean, with love and affection that's otherworldly, but as if he's a worldly, it's a worldly person that's got to have his sacred thread ceremony.
The other question was how old he was when Jagannath Mishra.
That you're asking the same question, and I already answered the question. They're following tradition, so that's when. Okay. Online anything? Yes? No? Okay. Prabhupada. Nice.